Good morning. Have a seat. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to Advantage Testing's 9th Annual Math Prize for Girls. My name is Ranu, Boppana. I'm a volunteer. I'll be your moderator for this morning's program. My husband, Ravi Boppana, you might have gotten some emails from him as the director and the co-founder of this competition. People sometimes ask, why do girls need their own competition? Do you hear that a lot? So let me tell you how this came about. In 2007, Arun Alagappan, who's the founder of Advantage Testing, established the Advantage Testing Foundation. And he asked Ravi if he had any ideas on how to expand our nation's leadership pool to include those from underrepresented backgrounds. And what came to mind immediately for Ravi is the number of girls with enormous math talent who we lose every year from STEM. Though this is technically a competition with some pretty impressive prizes, Math Prize was envisioned to create a space for these girls to meet each other, create their own networks, and hear from inspiring female role models in STEM so that they can too be encouraged to make their mark. When MIT volunteered to host Math Prize, we were really excited. Ravi and I are both MIT alums, and we couldn't think of a better venue. Now that it's our 9th year, I, like many of you, have been wondering, what are our alums up to? And you're in for a real treat today. We wanted to hear their stories firsthand, so we've convened here a diverse panel of some of our Math Prize alum for girls alums who are local and they could stop by today. And believe me, they're very impressive. So let me introduce them quickly to you because I want to give them as much of an opportunity to speak as possible. And I'm going to go in order. So we have Jane Wang. She is currently a graduate student at MIT studying geometry and dynamics. Jane also enjoys sharing math with others and has taught and mentored middle school and high school students at math summer camps and after-school programs. She hopes to be a professor one day, math professor. And we hope that you are a professor one day. Next we have Sarah Rubin. Sarah is also a first-year graduate student in the MD PhD program at Harvard Med School, and she's actually an alum from our very first year, 2009. Sarah studied chemistry at Princeton, and then she spent a year in Israel as a Fulbright scholar doing research. She recently completed her preclinicals and is beginning her PhD in immunology, and she aspires to be a physician scientist. Next we have Elaine. Elaine Howe is a junior at Yale, where she's majoring in math and computer science. In her spare time, she also runs a math competition called M-Maths at Yale and several other universities for high school students, and she works on empowering women in math and computer science. And she hopes to attend law school when she graduates. Over here we have Victoria Shia, who is she's finishing her last year of her combined bachelor's and master's here at MIT in computer science. She hopes to apply her technical skills to advance part of the public sector, such as education. So EdTech, maybe. Her other interests include neuroscience and psychology, exploring unfamiliar neighborhoods, and rock climbing. Very impressive. Okay, next we have Meena Jagadisan. Meena is a sophomore at Harvard. She is majoring in computer science and math. She's very modest, like all of our panelists here, so I've included a few other things. She's like, oh no. Mina was a second place winner at Intel, and she's currently involved in research in theoretical computer science and hopes to become a math researcher. Okay, and last but not least, we have Cameron Krolewski. Am I saying that right?
That's great.
Yes. Cameron is a junior at Harvard, studying math and physics. She has loved math since middle school, and she also serves as co-president of the student organization Gender Inclusivity in Math. She spent this summer studying algebraic topology at the University of Chicago, and she looks forward to learning more about the interplay between math and physics. Okay, so am I right? Very impressive panelists here. Okay, so let's get started, and I'm going to sit down and let these guys talk. Why don't we start on this side and move across with each question, okay? My first question for you guys is, why math, okay? What or who inspired you to learn math when you were younger? Everyone needs a lot of discipline and motivation to do hard things. What was that for you, and do you feel like you needed any extra motivation as a girl?
Hello. So I guess I've always really, really liked math. When I was young, I actually wanted to be a doctor, but somehow the math classes were so much more interesting to me than the science classes, so I ended up doing math instead. But I had a lot of really, really great role models growing up, and my math teachers in particular sort of pushed me to do better. They introduced me to extracurricular math, to contests, to all this fun math that goes beyond what you learn in the curriculum. And then that with my parents and everyone encouraging me and motivating me and pushing me on made me feel like I could do math, even though everyone said, oh, math is so hard. Why do you want to do it? It's so hard. But I think when you really love something, difficulty isn't an obstacle, and my family and my teachers were really good in helping me understand that.
Why don't we hold the applause? I know that we want to clap for everything, but I want to hear them speak as much as possible, okay? And also, guys, please speak into the mic so that everybody can hear you, okay?
Okay. So for me, when I was growing up, I really enjoyed problem solving, and I really wanted to understand the world around me. And I saw math as a way to do this. You know, even silly things like how early do I have to leave to get somewhere is calculating, how long it will take you to get to where you're going, and, just kind of thinking about how you're going about your life in a quantitative way. And that was really attractive to me. I also think that when I was in elementary school, starting in even, second or third grade, my school was very supportive. I went to a public school, not any fancy school or anything like that, but we had all sorts of math enrichment activities. And so even something so simple as learning multiplication tables and going around the classroom and trying to see if you could do it the fastest, and little in-class competitions with Math Munchers and the 24 Challenge. And I'm not sure if any of these things are still used today, but they were a lot of fun for me, and I always just enjoyed kind of challenging myself to get a little bit faster, get a little bit better. My teachers were very supportive. I think they were passionate, they could see my passion, and they helped me enrich my studies in that way. I'm still in contact with many of my high school teachers, and now we're good friends. But I think my parents, my teachers, everyone they were all supporting me in my interest in pursuing a more quantitative path through elementary school, high school, and beyond.
All right, so my family was very supportive of studying quantitative fields. My father is a mathematician, and when my sister was younger, back in middle school, she would attend local math competitions, and they looked like a lot of fun, so that's how I got into it. And overall, my family has been very supportive of my endeavors in mathematics. And I got into it because I really loved finding patterns in things. So when I was 4, I would try to add numbers like 21 plus 16, and I tried to do it on my fingers, but I ran out of fingers. And then my dad told me, hey, you can just add the columns, and that just changed my world. And ever since then, I've been very into math, just how you can just find things that actually work and you don't have to do everything the long way, and how there are just general patterns that control what happens.
For me, math actually started as something that was just fun. Like, I didn't realize that it was something that people studied or like turned into a career. When I was really little, my dad started doing it with me, and it was sort of just like the fun thing to do in the afternoon, kind of like puzzles. Eventually this evolved. I started going to school. That wore off a little bit, but each time I felt like my motivation was waning, I guess. It was always a community that pulled me back into it. So in elementary school, when one of the teachers founded what would become our math counts team, and I was, for the first time, doing math with a bunch of other people. That sparked my interest for it all over again. And this happened again in middle school, it happened again in high school, and now in college, the math community is huge. So for me, it was always community that kept me going.
I have an older brother who's really interested in math, and as a kid, I wanted to be just like him. So I used to try to do math problems to be like him, but then it became something that we used to talk about, and I used to talk to my family about, and then I realized how much I enjoyed solving problems. And through middle school and high school, I met other people through math contests and other math programs, and kind of like Victoria, I think the community kept me going.
So I guess math was something that I was always sort of good at, and over time I began to appreciate more that problem solving is really interesting. I love the feeling when you figure out a new trick and see a new connection in mathematics, and you just discover things that are very creative. I think my parents were probably the biggest source of support for me, especially through elementary and middle school. But I also had a lot of support from my math teachers. And interestingly, I went to an all-girls high school, so maybe we'll talk more about that later, but I had a lot of great math teachers there and a lot of support, and I never felt like I couldn't do anything because I was a girl.
Super, thank you. Just make sure you speak into your mic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that their, common denominator was, being able to hold on to that enthusiasm and that love for math is what kept you guys going. So that's great, as well as some role models. So great. So my next question for you guys is, what advice, now you all are either in college or just out of college, what advice would you give your younger self about navigating college? And what college resources were most helpful for you in exploring your interests?
Right, so college is a really big place with lots of things that you can do. So my advice to my younger self is don't be timid, be bold, try new things. And I think one thing that was good for me when I was in college was trying different subjects. I thought I wanted to do math, but I wanted to be absolutely sure. So I tried econ, I tried computer science, and with the classes and the clubs and everything that was available, I could decide once and for all, okay, no, nothing else is just as good. Math has to be the way forward. But I needed to get there. I needed to realize that, and I think I wouldn't have been happy just staying in my little niche and walking this straight path. I needed to veer and just try new things and sort of take advantage of everything that college has to offer. Also, the community in college is really great. You're surrounded by lots of people from various diverse backgrounds with so many great experiences and great life stories, and just talking to them and hearing about them and hearing what's out there, that is another one of the great advantages of college.
Yes, so just to echo what Jane said, I think if I were to tell my college self something, it would be to continue to explore all of your passions and not just go with what you think you like, but really give it a chance to try things that are out of your comfort zone. To kind of like Jane said, just have a breadth of experiences, and then you can focus on what you find to be your true passion later on. I think that's really important, and I really appreciated a liberal arts education for that. I also think it's important to do things outside of class. So I think having a club or a hobby, I was on the track team, so that was a great kind of release for me. And I think not just doing homework all the time and studying is actually really important. And now that I'm going into the medical field, mental health and staying happy and healthy as a whole person is very, very important. So sleep is important, and all of those good things. Actually, I wish I slept more in college, because now I'm sleeping more now, and it's fantastic. So little things like that. I think being happy is really kind of my number one thing, that in whatever you're doing, you shouldn't be doing something that you're not happy with. So if you need to change majors, or if you find a new passion, I think it's really important to realize that, and not just think that you're set in your ways and that nothing can change, because in many cases it can, and you just need to speak up, and you can get into a better situation. I also think that relationships are important, and so college is a busy time. There's a lot going on, and it's really, really difficult to say no sometimes to, that extra fun event on the weekend, or, spending an extra 2 hours in that problem set because you just really want to figure out the answer, which I usually did. But, I think it's also important to get to know your classmates, to, just make relationships that can last you a lifetime. And I think that that's something that can sometimes get lost along the way if you're so focused on academics or so focused on a hobby. So I think trying to just be really well-rounded from that early on, because the habits that you set in college are going to be the habits that you take with you to grad school or whatever you end up doing. And it's, I think, important to start early with some good habits so that you don't find yourself in your mid-20s and you still don't really have a good work-life balance, because that's something that, especially in grad school, it's very easy to stay in the lab, or very easy to, try to be working on your thesis all the time, but there's much more out there to be doing, and I think it's important to have a well-rounded life.
All right, I 100% agree with everything that Jane and Sarah said. It's super important to make sure that you're exploring new things in college. It's super important to make sure that you're developing good relationships and you're also taking care of yourself. And because college is where you're really setting up being an adult for the rest of your life. And extending on the idea of relationships, just finding mentors and making sure you're developing good relationships with them. So if you take a class with a professor you really like, make sure you keep in touch with them, and make sure you're still, fostering a good relationship with them, because there's some professors at my school, especially in the CS department, who have been very supportive of me, and I consider them rocks in my life. And it's just really important to have those people there, and just having a community to be there for you. And let me see. And also, I would say, yeah, so college is, and also don't be afraid of college. A lot of college is just changing and becoming a new person. Every year I look back and I think, wow, I was a very different person last year. And I do this every year, even though I'm now a junior in college, and I've been in college for a while.
You guys are full of great advice.
So Sarah and Elaine have already mentioned the things that I want to say, but I'll briefly put my take on it since they're important to me. The first is that classes are only a really small part of college. I really wish I had realized this earlier. Especially here at MIT, there's this tendency to sign up for more classes just because the person next to you is signed up for 8 or something like that, or to try to squeeze in that extra degree or graduate a semester early. But at the end of the day, the trade-off, sort of the time that you're spending doing that, like, you can do it. Like, I did this my first 2 years. Like, it's doable. It's just that the things that you're giving up are sort of not worth it, which relates to my second point. So like Elaine said, seeking out mentors. The other thing I wish I had known was that at college, it's so easy to talk to people, and people are actually really willing to listen to you. Like, as an undergrad here, if you email a professor being like, hey, I'm really interested in your research, can I meet with you to talk about it, or something like that, professors are surprisingly willing to respond and say yes. But you imagine, like, after graduating, if you're just some random stranger who sends the same email, you're not going to get a response. So the lesson is sort of like, try to take advantage of the people that you can talk to and learn from while you're in college. So it's not just professors, but also older students. So when I was a freshman, talking to seniors and sort of seeing what they were thinking about, talking to your TAs in classes, talking to grad students if these are things that you might be interested in doing later on. They're all really easy, and this is something that I definitely wish I had taken advantage of more.
I think the other girls kind of brought this up, but I think for me, what was most important during my freshman year was not being afraid to try new things. So by the end of high school, I was kind of comfortable with some of my interests, and I kind of entered like a routine where things didn't feel new and scary anymore. And I think during my freshman year, I made an effort to try new subjects that I'd never learned anything about before. And I think this was scary at times, but it really made me develop my interests a lot more.
Yeah, I think I also agree with everything that's been said so far. I guess just to wrap up, one thing about college is that it's your own time that you're spending, so you need to prioritize on things you want to do. So if you have a class that you're really excited about, you should put time into it. You should get a lot out of it. But you definitely need to prioritize fun. I really like what Sarah said about that. It's very important to have a work-life balance and to just enjoy what you're doing. And in terms of finding a community in college, it is really easy to meet other like-minded people who are really excited about math, or for me, really excited about physics, and you can talk to them and you can see like all of these new subjects and new horizons that you didn't know about. And you can also get a lot out of just reaching out to professors and being sort of proactive with things. And you can just get a really incredible payoff if there's someone who would want to guide you going forward. They can point you in new directions.
Are you blown away by this? I wish I knew all of this, when I was in college, so thank you. Great. So my next question is, tell us what years you participated in Math Prize for Girls. Are you still in touch with anybody that you met in those years, and what has being part of the Math Prize for Girls community meant for you?
I did Math Prize for Girls in the first year it was run in 2009. And I guess for me, being part of the community is just knowing that there's so many women mathematicians in the world, maybe scattered all over the world, but they exist. And that's sort of inspiring because sometimes I'm in a class with all men, and then I have to think, no, this isn't how it is. The world is different. The world has women mathematicians. Math Prize for Girls taught me that. And I think one interesting coincidence that happened in my life was when I moved in with one of my current roommates. We were reminiscing about the past, and then Math Prize came up, and we're like, oh my gosh, we did Math Prize in the same year, and we got 3rd and 4th, and we were on the stage together. Oh my goodness, we have so much in common. So you just run into Math Prize for Girls people everywhere. Like Sarah and I did it the same year, and then we met again in college. And it's really great. I'm really glad that it exists and the community exists.
Yes, so obviously I also did it the first year in 2009 with Jane, although I don't think we actually met there. We met in Mat 215 at Princeton, which was a fun course, lots of late nights. But I think for me, and what brings me back, I've been, volunteering. This is my 3rd year now. All of the years I've been in Boston. When I wasn't in Boston, I wasn't able to come. But I think it's really important to stay connected with communities, and I really like the fact that this competition is bringing girls together from across the country who love math. And I think fostering that, and it's very easy along the way to lose support and then lose interest. And I think this competition, others, just help foster the community that everyone's been talking about up here. And I think whether it be in sports and academics, community is really very important. And I think it is what keeps people going, so I like to be a part of it.
All right, I competed from the years 2009 to 2013. And yeah, Math Prize has created a really great community of women interested in math for me. So I go to Yale, I live in New Haven. I'm not from Boston, but I still come here every now and then to visit friends who I know through Math Prize. And I've really been very lucky and fortunate to develop lifelong relationships because of Math Prize and because I got the chance to meet these people. And some of these people were very close, and we really understand each other because we both understand this somehow unique yet common experience of being a woman in mathematics. And Math Prize has been very good for that, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm the same as Elaine. I competed in 2009 through 2013, and right afterwards I came here to MIT as a student, so I've been volunteering since then. You guys have already covered the community and how amazing that is. I guess the only thing I'll add to that is It's really inspiring to not only meet people who are older than you, who have similar interests, so you can kind of see what they're up to, but also even just meeting people around my own age and realizing that we're all sort of confused about the same things, like what we want to do for college and afterwards, and working through that together. So the entire spectrum of meeting people, like older than you, younger than you, who you can serve as mentors for, has been really important to me.
So I competed in Math Prize from, I think, 2010 to 2015. And I think one of the most memorable things for me was when I was in middle school, coming here and meeting seniors and juniors in high school who are much older than me, and seeing that they were still very like girly and still did all the fun like girly things that I like to do, but also were interested in math. And I think in middle school I felt this pressure, since it was mostly guys on the math teams with me, to like be quieter and not do fun girly things. So I think that was inspiring.
If I calculated correctly, I was at Math Prize 2012 to 2014, and then and now I'm just really impressed and inspired by all of the young mathematicians here. It's great to run into other people like Mina who also did the same program, and it's really exciting to come back and volunteer and see everyone excited to do math.
Very cool. And I have to say that my daughter, who graduated from college from Harvard last year, has had the same experience. She's been in touch with so many of the girls that she met, through the years. It's an incredible community. And by the way, are we passing out index cards and pencils? You guys, as you have questions, please write them down. We're going to have an opportunity to ask those questions at the end, okay? Gosh, we're already like so impressed by not only, the amazing things you've done, but how well-rounded you are. Tell us a little bit more. What keeps you balanced? What extracurricular projects have brought you the most joy and are most meaningful to you?
Right, so as Sarah mentioned, it's important to do things outside of academics, both in college and beyond. So I'm in grad school now, and outside of doing math, I like being outdoors. So I like to go hiking, I like to go skiing in the winter, I just like being outdoors in the sun. And another thing I like to do in my free time is sort of spread math and teach other people about math. So math programs are really important to me when I was growing up, so I like to give back now that I'm a little older and I know a little bit more. So one thing I've been involved in is this program called Girls Angle, which is a local program in Cambridge, which does extracurricular math with middle and high school girls. So that's been really fun, sort of fostering their love of mathematics and giving back to the community that gave me so much.
So for me, I grew up playing sports all throughout elementary school and high school, and I already mentioned that I was on the track team in college. So sports for me has kind of been that constant part of my life, whether it be playing tennis or doing track. I've done lots of sports, but it's just a great release, and it's still an intense practice, and it's not like I am, relaxed or necessarily, sitting on a beach or doing something like that. But it gives me a time to just completely step away from the classroom and anything else that's going on in my life and really focus on something else and put all of my energy into that. So I was a pole vaulter in college, which is kind of hard to do when you're in med school, because it's at least where I am and tracks and coaches, it's not the easiest thing. So I started doing CrossFit, which is also very community-oriented. And I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and I love it. I think having a community outside of school, getting yourself off campus and doing something completely away from the academics and anything else is really helpful, at least it has been for me. I'm an RA now in a medical student dorm. I like giving back, I like mentoring, so I always try to put myself in roles where I can help people through some difficult times and be there at their best times and just kind of enjoy getting to know people. There's also been a couple of clubs in the medical school that I've been involved in, like the Maimonides Society and writing for an online medical journal. So basically trying to expose myself to different areas of medicine, being a part of activities that I'm all very passionate about, and not kind of putting the blinders on and just focusing on my classes and everything else. It's very easy to do that in medical school. And I think when people ask me, how do you have time to do all of these other things? Because I think it can be very easy not to. I think the key has really been prioritization. And if I want to go to the gym, I set that time up and I go to the gym. And if it's important enough to you, I think that you'll find a way to make it work. And so that's what I would encourage people to do.
So I'm actually someone is still working out the work-life balance, which makes sense. We're all still young people in our 20s, right? But I recently joined Ballroom, which is a lot of fun, so I can't wait to learn to waltz and foxtrot across rooms. And also, I've been very inspired by a lot of math competitions, especially Math Prize for Girls and HMMT. So at Yale, we started a competition called MMath, as Ranu mentioned. So our goal is to have one math competition where we have one test, but we host it at 5 different schools. So Yale, Columbia, UVA, UMichigan, and University of Florida all host this competition. So it happens all at the same time, and we have a live round where you can actually see how you're doing compared to teams from other sites. And I really like this competition because our goal is to make math more accessible and more approachable for people, not just by having another event, but by having an event that's hypothetically close to them. And because of Math Prize for Girls, and because I was inspired, and because we have a really great team back at Yale, we're also starting a new event called Girls in Math at Yale. And this is our first year, and it's going to be on November 11th. And there will be more details later if you're interested.
Like Sarah, sports and exercise have always been the most important thing to me, beyond academics. I don't know which one comes first. I played a variety of sports. Currently, I'm into rock climbing. But even beyond that, the other important thing to me in terms of work-life balance is just getting off campus, which sounds a little bit silly, but depending on which university you go to, it's so easy to not leave campus just because everything is there. Like your friends are there, your classes are there, where you live is there, the food is there. But just finding an excuse, or in my case, just curiosity, causes me to want to explore Boston. So maybe every other weekend or something like that, I'll grab a friend, we'll just walk across the bridge and explore a neighborhood that we haven't seen before. Maybe a few times a semester, I'll try planning a trip to New York or Philadelphia, somewhere nearby that just feels really different. I find that if I take my mind off of sort of where I normally am, when I come back, I'm much more willing and excited to continue the things I normally do.
Like Victoria, I also love exploring new places and getting off campus. But for me, I think the most important space on the Harvard campus for me has been my sorority. It's an empowering, supportive group of women. And I think being the only girl in many of my math and computer science classes, I really wanted a community of women from diverse backgrounds to have like a supportive space where I felt like I could really be myself, and I've found that in my sorority.
I'd agree with a lot of things that were said so far. It's really important to get exercise, to get off campus, and to do non-academic things that you like. For example, I'm on the archery club. It's really fun to do that every week. In terms of other extracurriculars, I also am co-president of an organization called Gender Inclusivity in Math. It's a really great organization that's actually founded by Boppana, and it's continuing strongly this year. We try to create a community of mathematicians at Harvard. So through this organization, it is academic, but I've also made a lot of math friends that I wouldn't have otherwise, and really connected in ways that allowed me to make friends and have fun, in addition to just doing piece sets with people.
Wow, I'm so impressed. You guys are, you're so balanced. You're, active athletes, and all of you, it sounds like you're giving back. So that's just, I'm getting goosebumps. It's amazing. Okay, so we've got tons of more questions. So let's get to as many of them as we can. So here's my next one. Do you think there are particular challenges for women in becoming leaders in STEM? And what are your ideas about what we can do as a society and a community to lessen those?
So that's a very big question. So I have lots of thoughts about this. I think things are certainly getting better for women in STEM. There's more equality now. The gender balance is getting better year by year. So that's good. That's optimistic. That's progress for the future. But sometimes it's still challenging if you go to a math class and you're the only girl, and you need to remember things are getting better. It just takes time. And for me, one of the greatest challenges during undergrad was watching my fellow female mathematicians quit math because they thought it was too hard. They didn't like the environment. They weren't very happy or comfortable or things like that. But I think one thing you have to do is sort of keep perspective and keep your confidence and keep on going and remember that there are women out there who do math and who are very successful, and to look for those role models. So having Math Prize for Girls, having other organizations for women in math who are supportive of one another has really helped me over the years. And I think one experience that really opened my eyes to maybe the differences between some men and some women is I was doing this really hard problem set one year for complex analysis, and I was struggling and struggling and struggling, and I had done 8 of the 10 problems. And then I turned to one of my friends, and he said, "Oh, wasn't that problem set so easy?" I'm like, "No, I didn't think it was that easy." He's like, "Yeah, I've been working, and I've already done 8 of the 10 problems." So just remember, just keep perspective, keep confidence, and believe in yourself and support the women around you, and we can make it as a group, as a team.
So I do think that, like Jane said, things are getting better. And I think the challenge now is continuing to have women rise to the highest positions, because I don't have all the statistics, but I think that while more entry-level positions, say people looking for tenure track, is more equal, and I'm speaking more broadly, not just in math, because honestly I am more in the science and technology side of things, but I think that there are more women who are getting to that closer point, but then not rising through the ranks to department chair or those sorts of things. It's definitely getting better. We have deans of medical schools and deans of universities who are women and all of that. But for some reason, there's still this progression, and then there's a drop-off. And I think when people are following their passions and they just find that they don't want to do math or science, then that drop-off is okay. But when this drop-off is the effect of the surroundings and the community and the environment, I think that's not so okay. And some of the thoughts I have on why it's getting better and why it will hopefully continue to get better is that, at least in science, I think one of the challenges has been having a family and the traditional roles of men and women and their roles in family life. And I know conferences now in the sciences are starting to have daycare for the night before the conference, because I think there's usually, from my understanding, networking dinners and things like that the night before poster sessions and conferences. And in many cases, women were not able to go to those dinners because they were at home with the kids. And so in a field that is very network-based and progress is community-driven and a lot of who you know, and it's more about who you know and less about what you know in many cases, networking is very, very important. I think just having a family in general and the concern of maternity leave, which I don't think should be a concern of investigators or the higher-ups. I know in some cases it still is asked what women's plans are with regard to all of that. And I don't think that it should deter someone from hiring someone, but those sorts of barriers are still out there. And you're here in medicine, and especially in my track as an MD PhD, where you don't get out of school until you're 35 or so. If you want to have a family, there's really no good time to do it. So when people do, they just decide it's their priority, and that's what they want to start having a family. And they're hopefully in a situation where that doesn't hurt their career. But I think mentors are starting to become more understanding, and as there's more female mentors, they are understanding. So I think it really is a joint effort, and we're making progress, but there's still many barriers out there that make it more difficult for women to continue on their paths.
Jane and Sarah are right. Things are getting better, but there are still lots of barriers. And I'd like to touch on 2 of them right now. So there is, as I see, this divide where you can be good at math or you can be a girl, but you can't do both for some reason. So I remember distinctly in high school, I was in an AP Calc class, and one guy was talking about how he thought all the boys did better on their AP Calc tests than the girls did, and I have a reputation in my high school for being good at math, and I said, hey, what about me? And he said, you don't count as a girl. Yeah. And maybe this isn't true of all women, but there are definitely people out there who think, am I too feminine to do math? Can I, do math and still, do girly things and, wear a dress and, whatever it is, whatever being feminine means to you. And I think we as a society have not done a very good job of showing role models where we have people who are doing both, or we do a better job of validating both a person's identity as female and identity as a STEM person. And another issue I'd like to point out is that while all of us here are women in STEM, and everyone here is a parent or a coach, or someone who's a woman in STEM, and you may know of their personal struggles, there are definitely people out there who deny that women in STEM have a problem, or they don't realize that women face specific and distinct issues, such as, say, becoming a parent and having a family, or constantly being a minority in a classroom. And I think it's important that we do a good job making sure that people are aware that this is a problem.
Yeah, going off of what Elaine said, I definitely think one of the problems right now is sort of cultural stereotypes. I'm optimistic about the progress that's being made here. So think about like TV shows and movies where whenever they depict like the coder hacker dude, it's always like a dude. And I know there are efforts being made in Hollywood to sort of change this, to fight these stereotypes, which I'm optimistic about. Also going off of what Elaine said though, there are plenty of people, in my experience, who sort of don't realize that this is a problem. And when I've spoken to these people in the past and I've shared my experiences and why I think it is a problem, people are generally pretty receptive to this. So I think one thing for us to keep in mind is these people do exist when we encounter them, just to sort of share our perspective in a non-attacking way. And people are typically willing to open their minds. And I guess the last thing I'll add is that from a position where we realize that this is a problem, being willing to speak up, to say, like if we identify specific ways in which women are sort of being turned away, either from a class that we're in or a company that we've interned at, this has happened to me before, being willing to share this with someone who can change it.
One barrier I've experienced is not getting credit for my ideas. So sometimes I'm working on a PSET with, say, one or two of my male friends, and then the rest of the people in the class assume that the other friends solved the PSET problems and I didn't do anything. And that can be very frustrating for me, especially when they come over to me and if they ask me for a hint or something, and they ask how did this other person solve it? And it made me, I guess, not feel like I was getting credit for the work I did.
So I think we've heard about a lot of issues so far that are very significant. I'd like to talk again about a couple of them in the context of what gender inclusivity in math tries to do, at least at Harvard, to ameliorate some of these problems. So I think one of the main problems is just having a lack of a community. When you're a minority in the classroom, it can be harder to connect with other people, or to have the confidence either to reach out to other people or to or to admit that maybe you have questions. Sometimes when I'm in a classroom and it's mostly guys, I don't necessarily want to be the one person to raise my hand and ask the professor what just happened. So one of the things we do at GIM, which is Gender Inclusivity in Math, is we try to hold social events to get people to know each other outside of the classroom so they're more confident with each other and can share resources. We hold advising events so people can talk about courses, like which course should I take. If you're looking at a certain course and there's not a lot of girls in the class, like, oh, how do you figure out whether it could be right for you? We have resources for that. And another main thing is a lack of role models. So one thing we do at GIM is we try to invite women to come speak about their research, speak about their experience. We also host a conference in the spring to discuss some of these issues. But a main thing is having role models. So seeing someone achieve to the highest level and know that you can be just like her is important. And I think as to my personal experience, I've been very lucky to have been supported all along throughout my middle school, high school career, and coming to Harvard, I haven't had bad experiences. It's just been that a lot of the time, most of my classmates are boys, and it turned out that I spent a lot of my time doing problem sets, and so most of my friends turned out to be boys. So it was really interesting trying to navigate this kind of new social scene, and it was great to kind of fall back on another community where I could meet girls who are doing math, so I could really connect with people in another way. That was also very helpful to me.
Okay, that's great. I just want to say a couple of things. As a parent and someone who has experienced pretty much all of these things that you've described, right? I finished my training when I was 35, had to deal with, balancing a family and career, and have faced all of these things that you've described. And I think as a parent, it kind of breaks my heart to see that this still hasn't changed. So, I want to hear a little bit more about your ideas of how you think. What can parents do? What can teachers do? What can your mentors do? What can your male peers do? What can we do as a society that would help overcome some of these barriers that have really been kind of difficult to retract?
So I think just creating a supportive atmosphere for women to do mathematics and STEM in general, I don't know, if you see a young girl who loves STEM, loves science, encourage her to do it. Don't say, oh, don't get your shoes dirty playing in the sand. Just sort of foster their love and tell them whatever you want to do, whatever you aspire to be, you can be that. Even if maybe society stands in your way or something, just go for it, be bold. And another thing is sort of calling out sexist behavior when you see it. If someone says something that sort of puts you off and you think, wait, why did they make that comment? Did they make that comment just because she was a woman? Calling them out for it and saying, maybe you shouldn't have said that. Because it's the small steps that we take that sort of help the women in math and science community in the long run.
I agree. I also think that just generally respecting each other is pretty key. And I think right now there are pockets of, certain mentors that people know are through word of mouth, willing to accommodate people wanting to, say, have a family or that sort of thing. So there are pockets now, and I think now with the strength of the community, women can understand kind of what might be a good fit for them at that point in their career versus maybe someone who, as a boss, may not be the best boss. I still think there's a lot of problems with that because you shouldn't be limited in what you can do based on who is currently in charge of what you want to do. But I think it's a lot of the traditional gender roles that has also been mentioned. Now there's a lot of stay-at-home dads, and just coming to appreciate that the role of a female is not necessarily to be at home with the kids or in a non-science field, that women can excel just like guys can excel in science and math and medicine and everything else. And I think it's really a way of thinking and just appreciating that the few months a woman might be gone if she's having a baby is not really a loss to the lab or the clinic or something like that, but it's her starting a life and becoming a more enriched and fulfilled person. And I think that's where a lot of the challenges really come down the road. In terms of supportiveness along the way, I think that's where all of these organizations, which I think most universities, at least in this area, have with graduate women in science or female medical students. There's a lot of female-centered organizations that not only provide community, but also provide an avenue for speaking with administration and advocating for the females at the school. And I think some of the classroom stuff is probably going to be the hardest to change because that is, working more from the ground up. But as a college student, I'm not sure if everyone's as mature as they would. I'm not sure if they have the maturity to appreciate that saying certain comments like that or, not giving someone credit for doing the work. I think that's something that at this point is being learned over time, and it would be great if it could come from the top down, as I've more been mentioning, and also from the bottom up. But I think the top-down method might be, at least at this point, a faster way to create a more supportive environment.
I'd like to go back to what Jane said about calling out sexist comments or any form of sexism you see, even if you're not the one who's experiencing the sexism, because I've noticed that if a woman tries to call out whoever is making a sexist comment, people will say, oh, you're being petty or you're being catty or you're being difficult. And in some ways, it's easier if a third party comes in and says, hey, that wasn't cool. Why did you say that? And a lot of this change is going to take time because a lot of it is social and cultural. And I'd like to see people, mentors, teachers, your peers start as early as elementary school or even younger, and just building good habits and building non-discriminatory and positive cultures. So the younger you start, the better it is. It's college, and there are still a lot of problems going on in college and apparently in grad school and in professional life. So a lot of it is going to take time, and it has to start very young and as soon as possible.
I think the two big things are awareness and a willingness to be vocal. So awareness, like Sarah said, is probably going to be a top-down thing, but a willingness to be vocal, I think we can all play a part in. So maybe I'll give an example of what I was trying to say earlier. Like, say I'm in a classroom and I am uncomfortable with an activity. Like, one thing that has come up in the past is the teacher arranges a fun activity. It's like a competition, and the classroom, mostly full of boys, just gets like way too into it to the point where it makes me really uncomfortable that these people are sort of like ripping at each other over what was meant to be a fun classroom activity. This is something that perhaps bringing up to the teacher to say like, hey, I felt really uncomfortable during this activity because of the way some of my classmates were acting. Like maybe the teacher will be able to do something, maybe they'll change it for next year, but this is the sort of thing where usually the teacher just doesn't realize. So being willing to bring this up, I think, is a start.
Another girl from Harvard recently wrote an article that got me thinking about this point. But when I was growing up, my parents always encouraged me to aspire to be a strong mathematician, not necessarily a strong female mathematician. What I mean by that is when I compared myself to, say, 2 or 3 other girls in the class, and I was like, oh, I'm doing well, they always encouraged me to try to evaluate myself based on comparing myself to everybody, like the men and the women in the room. And I think this is really important because it also allows like women to not just feel like they're worse than the men in the room, because if you're really evaluating yourself fairly, then that can create more self-confidence, even though that might seem counterintuitive.
I agree with everything said so far. If we're trying to support self-confidence, it's really important to call out anything that's like a sexist comment, just to make sure that it is really unacceptable. But even just noticing if someone's being treated differently for some demographic reason, like that you should not necessarily call it out, but make sure to reach out to them and make sure that they know that they're just the same in terms of math. There shouldn't be a difference based on whether you're a girl or a guy, how you're treated in the classroom. And another thing is, let's see, seems to have slipped my mind for the moment, but I'll get back to it.
Okay. All right, great. So, what I'm hearing, we tend to think of STEM as sort of this automatically meritocratic field, right? Where, the numbers, they either add up or they don't, and everything else will take care of itself. And what I'm hearing from you all is that really the social and cultural factors, do really play a large role, continue to play a large role, and that we need to be aware of that, and that we have to begin to address those things as well. As I'm looking at the questions that some of the parents have sent, for you guys, for the panelists, I'm seeing that there are a lot of questions about, what role you guys have all done different kinds of careers. What role has math played for you? If you haven't chosen it, right? Like Jane, you can say what you think, but especially if you haven't chosen math as your primary focus, what role has that played for you?
So I do math, so math plays a big role in what I do. But I guess just learning about problem solving and learning how to tackle problems and that has been really important to me. But maybe I'll pass it along to the people who don't do math.
Okay, so I do math, but not, I do more applied math. So I will say, I guess going back to my freshman year of college when I did take real analysis with Jane, it was an awesome course. And I wasn't discouraged from math or anything like that. I just found my true passion, which was more applying math to trying to treat human disease. And so I think in that case, for me, I still very much love math. I took, basically all of the most quantitative courses I could take in the chemistry department and the biology department, and did all of the more applied techniques like, linear algebra and differential equations and things like that. So it's not as if I stopped doing math. And then I applied to the Health Sciences and Technology joint Harvard-MIT medical program, which is the more quantitative program at Harvard. So I still feel as if math has kind of also followed me along this whole path. It has influenced my course decisions, my medical program and degree that I'm in now. It's, like I said, I honestly think math is everywhere. And if you're studying math in particular, or if you're in the clinic and you have to understand lab values for a patient and make decisions based off of that, and understand probabilities of positives and negatives and things like that, math, I think, provides an extremely strong foundation for any science or applied technology type field that you go into. So it's still very much a part of my life, and I actually enjoy thinking about physiology in a more quantitative way, which I hope just provides an interesting take on it and might allow me to view different diseases or different processes in a slightly different way. So I guess I would just say that even if someone doesn't go into math directly, I think many of these fields that we're talking about are all quite quantitative, and I push myself to kind of keep that with me because it's very easy not to, especially in medicine. And I think that's actually a challenge in the field right now, is that having people coming from diverse backgrounds and with different experiences, one of the reasons I want to do both medicine and research is because I think that just provides you with a particular viewpoint that others without those experiences may not have. And each person coming to a clinical problem with their own different background experiences, as we do that together, I think we'll be able to better understand disease and hopefully come up with some novel, helpful treatments.
I'm currently a math major at Yale, but I plan to go to law school after I graduate. And this is very much a coming from left field, it's a very bizarre transition. But math has definitely inspired this, not just because math teaches problem solving and logical reasoning, which is very, very helpful for solving any problems, no matter what type of problem it is, but also because being a math competitor has shown me a lot of how the world's, in some ways, is not fair. And just because of who you are or where you're born or what your family is like, or just any factor like that, it might mean you might not reach your full potential. And that's why I want to go to law school, to make this world a little better, and to make sure that everyone who wants to do STEM gets to do STEM. And let me see, what was the question again?
Well, that was a fantastic answer, by the way. And, you know, I think that if we had more mathematical minds going into law and going into medicine and going into politics, we would be living in a better world. So,
Oh yeah, I remembered.
Yes.
So in 2009, Richard Russick gave a speech at Math Prize for Girls, and he talked about how it was important to make sure we had women in leadership roles, and not just in STEM roles, but he mentioned, wouldn't it be great if your daughter became a congressperson? And that's, well, we need leadership, and we need women in leadership roles in all sorts of fields, and that's why I'm doing something that's very different considering my STEM background.
So being a computer science major, computer science is close enough to math that I still feel like I'm doing math. But even beyond that, having done math growing up, I feel like it's just sort of permeated the way that I think. So this sort of very logical, like, start from what we know, start from the facts, or maybe acknowledged assumptions, whatever is next best. And just building up logical arguments to reach some sort of conclusion that you can then explain to someone else. I think the communication that math has taught me has also been really important. This shows up not just in computer science and other technical classes that I've taken, but I found it really helpful when taking classes like philosophy or political science even. Like, people will just appreciate the sort of very logical step-by-step, like having a clear understanding of how you came to your conclusion and being able to articulate that. So really math is all around us, and I can see it coming up again and again. And I'm really grateful for my math background for this reason.
So I'm currently interested in theoretical computer science, and I see a lot of math there. So I see this as more a continuation of my study of math, also because I'm majoring in both math and computer science. So I'll let Cameron go.
If we could touch very briefly on the previous question, I do remember what I wanted to tell you. So I think one thing in math is that one of the stereotypes is that you need to fit a certain mode or a certain lifestyle, not necessarily even that you look a certain way, but that you are a mathematician if you do this, this, and this, and if you act in this way, and if you already know all the definitions of things in class. So as a parent, what you can do is you can just encourage your children, your students to be enthusiastic about math and to get a lot out of it, not necessarily to be a mathematician or to follow a certain path. And with respect to how math has influenced me, I'm majoring in math and physics, so I came into college knowing that I liked math and I wanted to give physics a try because it was very mathematical. And over time, I realized that while I really love math, I probably don't want to study exclusively math. I really like seeing how it can apply to other things. So in physics, if you put it in really grand terms, it's like using math to understand the universe, and that's just, it is really cool, and it blows me away when I learn new physics and see things that I learned in my math classes coming up there. And I also have to agree with what you said about how using math and logical thinking in other courses, even like in history courses and philosophy courses. It's a good way of organizing new concepts.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, I think I agree with everything that you guys are saying about how, you know, learning math really teaches you to think logically and to solve problems, and that it's really a bedrock for so many things. We take for granted that literacy, right, is the ability to read and write is essential for everything, but so is numeracy, and so is being able to problem solve and think logically. So absolutely. We did a survey, by the way, of Math Prize for Girls alums back in January. And we asked them what they were doing now that what they're majoring in, what they're doing after college. We had 159 responses. And those who are working said that many of them are working as software engineers, business consultants, project managers. Many of them are teachers, working in tech. We have people working in finance, Federal Reserve Board data analysts, traders, people who've gone, women who've gone to grad school, have majored in all the engineering subspecialties you can think of, computer science, medicine, biology, political science, physics, etc., and all the sciences. So, a very wide variety of chosen fields. I think, to me, math is probably one of the most accessible things that you can get into in middle school, right? You don't need to know a lot of science or much more to get into that and to think about the problems. And so people who are good at that, as they explore other fields, it really becomes the beginning of this whole tree of branching out into different areas. So I see a lot of questions here asking about your early experiences. Okay, so there's questions about what is your fondest math memory? What those of you who had parents who were encouraging, what was it that they did? What would you not want them to do? And also, did you have any hardships in your math journey, and how did you overcome it?
So my fondest math experience is probably in my high school calculus class, where we're learning how to find the volumes of things. So we wanted to do an integral, we wanted to break it up into pieces, and then find the volume of some mound or some shape. And what my calculus teacher did is he brought in this giant leak into class, and we all sat there wondering, why did he have a leak on his desk? And if you know anything about leaks, if you cut them open, you can sort of pick out cylinders, many cylinders. And he was showing us how you can find the area of the leak by finding sort of the volumes of the various cylinders. So he cut us a little shape, and then he said, look, we can take out cylinders of the leak, and if we find the volumes of each of these cylinders, we find the whole volume of the leak. And I just thought that was so cool that he took in a common everyday vegetable and taught us math with it. And so that was one of the experiences that led me to do math in college, which is kind of great. I forgot the rest of the question.
The second part was about parents. If they were involved, what was encouraging and what would you not want them to do? Mm-hmm. And then the third part was about the hardships.
I see. Okay. So my parents are really great. They sort of let me do whatever I wanted in middle school and high school. They actually sort of just let me roam free and find my own path. I think so. They're not here, so I can say this. They actually really strongly pushed me away from math in high school, and I think it was out of pure love, and I understand that now, but I wish they hadn't done that. But I think their rationale was like, you should do something that has job prospects, and they thought that math didn't. Which is fine, that's great, and I really love that they loved me so much that they said to my face, no, do medicine. But I guess sort of encourage your children to follow their dreams, and even if you think they might end up homeless on the streets, I think they'll be fine.
Okay, so from a very young age, my mom especially always told me I could do anything I put my mind to doing. And I think at that age, that kind of just blind encouragement and, if you want to do it, make it happen. from when I was maybe even 2 or 3, just hearing that over and over again. I mean, you can think of negative situations if people are told certain pieces of information that take them down a different road. But in this case, to hear that repeatedly over and over again, you can do anything you put your mind to, was a super supportive and nurturing way to grow up. I tend to be kind of a competitive person in sports, and I always really liked the math competitions. And so I think back to elementary school when there was like math league, and I mentioned the 24 challenge. We had in our school a competition for that, and with t-shirts. I also like free t-shirts, so that was always fun. And so I think back to all of these just very small, from very small to Math Olympiad to Math Prize for Girls, and USAMTS, the United States Mathematical Talent Search, which I started doing in high school, which was also a lot of fun. I kind of just enjoyed the competitive environment and those sorts of competitions from an early age, and then the experiences that they allowed me to have after them, such as, I think there's a program called CMITES with Carnegie Mellon. If it's still called that, I don't know. And then the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, they had some summer courses that you could take based on your performance on these competitions. And I remember taking a math course when I was introduced to the Fibonacci sequence. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, how it was all around us in nature, and the golden ratio and all of that. More recent memories of math would be actually office hours with Professor Peter Sarnak, where he would have us go up to the board in real analysis and basically have us solve the problems that we couldn't solve. And if you got to the end and you still had no idea what, as a group collectively, we were able to walk through on the board, he would say erase it and do it again. And I just really appreciated that commitment to having everyone in the room actually understand all of the steps to get to the answer. I think it's very easy. We call it hand waving a lot. A lot of hand waving happens in especially medicine and science. But in math, you really shouldn't hand wave. You need to have the logical steps, and on problem sets, when you don't really know how to get from A to B or A to C, or if you don't know how to get from A to D, sometimes you will kind of make things up and try to make it all fit together. But if you don't actually understand how that journey, how you got there, then I think that you're really missing out. So that was a memory that I still have to this day. Parents, I already mentioned that my mom was super supportive. My dad was also supportive, although not quite as vocally. Both of my parents are in medicine, and actually I told them I wasn't going to be a doctor. So I think each person comes their own way to their trajectory. And although I have pictures of me when I was like 1 with a stethoscope around my neck, I wasn't thinking about being a doctor until freshman year of college. I thought I was going to be a scientist, probably a chemist. And it took me longer than maybe other people to know what I wanted to do. And I still say I don't really know what I want to be when I grow up, because I still have many specialties to choose from in medicine. So I think continuing to encourage your children to have an open mind and allowing them, even if you think that math is the most wonderful thing, to allow them to come to that on their own, I think is really important. And my dad still doesn't let me live that one down. That he said, I told you so. And hardships, I guess, honestly, for me, and maybe this is a reason why I haven't been discouraged, I've never really, paid much attention to gender differences. I guess now when I think about it, because it's, more relevant, I think, in trying to advance through medical school and beyond. When I was growing up, I just was competing against everyone in my class. In those competitions, and maybe it was naive of me, but I never even thought that I was a girl and they were guys, and this is kind of weird that I'm the minority. And perhaps this inability to really appreciate that difference helped me just kind of go through it. And I think now there's actually a lot more awareness from schools, and I think probably children are maybe more aware than I was at the time. I think that's a good thing, but I think being aware also maybe makes you reflect on yourself more, and should I really be in this situation? Is this, really the right environment for me? So I think sometimes some just blind enthusiasm is really very, very helpful, and I think knowing when to follow your passions and not let the rest of what's going on in the world affect what you do can be very helpful. So maybe I've avoided those hardships just by focusing on what I enjoy doing and staying true to that. I don't know.
So my earlier fond memories are of me doing math with my father, who is a math professor. So when I was in middle school, we would practice doing math counts countdown rounds together, and I'd race against him. And sometimes I'd win, but most of the time he would win because he's the mathematician. He's been doing this for 40 years. But my more recent memories are being with my peers and doing mathematics together, and sometimes taking a break and playing games, because mathematicians play games differently. So if you know the game Bananagrams, so I was playing with some friends who are very good at math, and they think about it differently. They're not just thinking about making words; they're thinking about strategy of how to get tiles from the center, and yeah. So just making sure you're having fun while you're doing math, and making sure that you're enjoying the people you're with, and something that my parents were definitely very supportive of me doing well in math and math competitions. They also did what Jane's parents did and wanted me to be a doctor. And if there is this one thing that I wish they hadn't done, it's that they focused a lot on my actual performance. What place were you? What was your score? And that made me stressed out in ways I really wish I hadn't been stressed out about back in high school. And I think as a parent, it's really important to make sure that as long as your kids are working hard and having fun and they like what they do, that you're being supportive of them.
That was a perfect segue into what I wanted to say. One thing that my parents did for me, especially my dad, that I'm just deeply grateful for, is that they always tried to teach me that the important thing in doing math competitions, or doing whatever it was I was doing when I was little, wasn't what came out of it, so the results of a competition, or did I get the right answer, did I make a careless mistake at the last step, something like that. It was more what I got out of the process. So it was sort of like, it didn't even matter if I got the right answer by some like tricky cheating method, or like I'd seen the problem before or something like that. It was like, did I actually get the ideas out of the problem, and could I apply it to a new thing? And they really drilled me into that. I think I had some direct quotes in there, which I really appreciated. And I guess the second thing would be sort of reassurance that whatever I wanted to do in the future, it would probably be okay. So Jane talked a lot about this. I know my parents like always wanted to ask me, like when I was a junior or senior in high school, like, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to study? What do you want to do afterwards? Questions like these. But for my sake, they tried to hold off a little bit, which I really appreciated. So they would ask, I would be like, oh, I don't know, maybe MIT, maybe computer science. And the reassuring response would be like, that sounds great. Like whatever you do, I'm sure it'll be fine. Like you'll do great at it, which I really appreciated.
So my parents were incredibly supportive when I didn't perform well at math contests. Like I could think of tons of math contests that I totally failed, and I would come home really upset, and they would tell me it was okay, and I would find a different way to be successful and find some other kind of avenue that I clicked with more. And I think now whenever I fail an interview or fail an exam or get stuck on a research problem, I think about that, and that's made me a lot tougher of a person and made me much more relentless when I pursue what I care about.
Yeah, I think parents being really supportive in terms of allowing you to decide what you want to do, but also making sure you get a lot out of what you do. So I really enjoyed in high school doing math competitions like math counts, or rather that was middle school, but math competitions were always pretty fun for me, and my parents supported me a lot in giving me the resources to get a lot out of them, so having me do problems outside, but also, not overdoing it. And I think some of my most fun math memories are just doing math, like maybe in a math competition or maybe just working on a problem set. Like nowadays, I have a lot of problem sets. Just working with my peers and figuring things out and discovering cool solutions and, you know, making some math jokes along the way. It's always pretty fun. And I think one thing in terms of hardships is that sometimes I will look at a problem set and I'll say, okay, every one of these problems is a hardship. These are all really hard. So I think it's having the perseverance to go through it can really be helped by having other people acknowledge that, wow, this is really hard. You should keep going. It's exciting that you're really dedicated to this. So as a parent, you can, you know, acknowledge that your child is doing something that's really cool and that would be pretty difficult, because sometimes they'll be surrounded by peers who will make it seem like it's easy.
Excellent. So what I'm hearing is the common themes of, have a lot of fun with it, have a lot of enthusiasm, enjoy the journey, don't worry so much about what's coming at the end or where you're going to end up in the end. And also just this idea of loving a challenge, right? Having this growth mindset that, you're going to tackle something really tough and you're going to struggle and enjoy that process rather than thinking about, what's coming at the end of it. My last question for you guys, we're here at MIT and I am always blown away every time I'm here on this campus thinking about the future. This is a place I feel where, the future is really created and it's just kind of palpable in the air. What kind of opportunities or projects are you most excited about for the future?
I guess long-term future, I hope to become faculty at a university someday, to teach and to do math and to learn math and to share it with other people. So that's my big goal. I'd really love to teach at a liberal arts college and really get to know students and foster their love for mathematics or sciences or whatever they want to do in the future.
So I already told you all that I don't know what I want to be when I grow up still, but I'm very, very excited about combining my love of medicine and science to hopefully be a part of a new wave of better treatments for patients. Right now, my interests are in oncology, specifically kids with cancer, but I'm also becoming more interested in child psychiatry and neuroimmunology. I'm in the immunology grad program. So I think that we're at a really exciting time just in science and medicine in general, where technology is at a point where we're starting to learn a lot of new things. We have a lot of data and don't necessarily know what to do with all of it, but we're starting to have new ways of looking at this data and trying to use it to better personalized treatments. And one of the reasons I'm doing the joint degree of the MD and the PhD is because I think in research, it can take a very long time if you even are able to discover something that is translational and makes its way from the bench to the bedside, which is the classic saying. And one of the joys of being in the clinic, I did 3 months in the hospital before starting my PhD, was really feeling like you were able to make a difference in someone's life every day. And as the medical student, you have the best job of less administrative paperwork and more time to actually get to know the people that you're taking care of as people. And that's something I thoroughly enjoyed and hope to do in the future, combining it with trying to deliver better care.
I'm excited about all the cool math things that people organize. There are new events every year, and it's crazy that Math Prize started not even 10 years ago, and now we've got a group of 300 girls who are all interested in math. And everyone here has a bright future, and that's really exciting. And I'm excited about going to law school and doing what I can to make sure that more people can have bright futures.
I'm really excited just to be doing something different next year. So while I really liked MIT, I think my love for just like trying new things and exploring new places sort of might overwhelm that a little bit. So next year, I'm just excited to graduate, to live somewhere different. I don't know where yet. And to kind of keep an eye open for how I can apply what I've learned in school and my experiences so far to something else. maybe a group of people that don't share as many experiences.
I'm really excited about the theoretical computer science research I'm working on right now. There's an amazing theoretical computer science community at Harvard, and I learned so much from talking to the people around me about the problems they're working on, the problems I'm working on, and that's what I'm most excited about this year.
I think I also don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I want to do something that continues to allow me to solve interesting problems and to work with people who are also excited about that. And going forward, the next year and a half or so, well, more than a half, since I'm a junior, I'm really excited about exploring through the rest of my college career the interplay between math and physics. Right now, I'm most interested in a branch of math called topology and how it might relate to physics. There are a lot of terms that kind of overlap between math and physics, and I'm trying to see what is the mathematical content of this physical concept, like what I think it is, or how does it actually interact, and what can abstract math tell me about physics?
Okay, very cool. And we're very excited to see what you guys are going to create, for the future and the world of the future. And hearing you guys talk about this reminded me of Richard Russick as well. A couple of years ago, he was here and he said something like, the jobs of the future haven't been created yet, right? So we don't know what they're going to be. You guys are you're learning how to think, you're learning how to solve problems, and that's the most important thing. So thank you. I want to mention, yeah. Yes, 1 second before I open it up. I just wanted to mention that this video, we are videotaping this. It is going to be available online. So we will let you know when that's available if you want to share it with anyone else. And in the last 5 minutes, I actually want to open it up if you guys have any other questions. And we have a microphone. If we could bring it up here, we have a question. Yeah, Melvin has the microphone. Great.
Okay, I have a very different question. I guess my daughter is good enough in math, so she's here. But she may not be good, as you guys said. So I want to hear maybe your experience maybe with other girls in the school who is good at math, but may not be top at math, and are they going to survive MIT, Harvard? So I'm just, I don't know. It sounds like you guys competed multiple years in math prize and maybe are top winners in the math prize. Does everybody around you like that? Or did you can share something? I'm sure a lot of people here, they're very good, but still a lot of people, they're just good enough. So I want to just... So
I just want to, you guys are so impressive, okay, that they're all thinking, you're in an elite category. But I just want to say that we could have put together, as impressive as these girls are, we could have put together many other panels that are equally impressive. So I just want to say that. And I'll let you answer.
So I think doing well in competitions isn't the same as being smart or like being a successful person. Just because you did poorly in one competition doesn't mean you're a failure for life and you're never going to amount to anything. And I think going into college, the people who did the best at competitions weren't necessarily the best at math or the best at science. It was the people who persevered and tried really hard and studied really hard that did well in the end, not the people who could solve a problem really quickly. So just because your daughter isn't number one at everything she does doesn't mean she'll never be great. She will be great.
Yes. Go ahead. I completely agree. I'm not that good. I just work really hard. And I wasn't on the stage here or anything like that. I was happy with my honorable mentions at competitions, if I even got that. So, I think that you've asked us a lot of questions where we can really talk about the positives and many of the great things that have happened to us based on our passions for math. And yes, I think that, we're all not like awful at math, but I don't, like Jane was saying, excelling in competitions versus working hard, maybe it would take me longer to get to the solution, but I would work at it until I got there, or I'd ask someone for help, and then I'd try to understand all of those steps of how they got there, so the next time I could hopefully get there on my own. So I think that there's this thought that sometimes things come really easy to people, and it's not, I think we're talking about all these positive experiences, but I would just let you know that I think if your daughter really loves math and is excited about it and passionate about it and willing to keep working, one of my big things is trying to get better, a little bit better each time. And I don't think you have to be the best in a competition to excel in life. So.
Yeah, so Jane and Sarah have already said everything I wanted to say, but just reiterating, making sure as long as she's learning and she's excited about math, she's going to be fine. Definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that's been said so far. Just looking around at my fellow classmates at MIT, the people who study math and the people who do well in math research are not the people who, not necessarily the people who did well in competitions in high school. Like, in part because it's so different, and the larger part being what Jane and Sarah already said. It's not about how bright you are to begin with. It's more about your passion for math, and if that's something that is able to carry you through the tough times, because everyone doing research or studying anything at university is going to have those tough times.
I completely agree. I also think hard work is very undervalued. I think hard work can get you so far. I know that everyone says that, but I really think that's true. And I think we're all still young, and our ability is very dynamic right now and is going to change and shape as we get older. So I don't think it's necessarily reasonable to evaluate any of us right now as to where we are and how successful we are right now.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question because a lot of the time when you send your daughter or something to a math competition, you get a score at the end, and it seems like you should be very hierarchical in your ranking, but that's really not how it should work. In math, there is kind of a stereotype that either you're a math genius or you're one level down or you're another level down, but it really doesn't work like that. It depends on how much time you spend on a particular problem, because you'll find if your daughter enjoys doing math and she keeps going on in it and she finds a field that she likes, she'll spend time studying it and she'll go really deeply into it and she'll discover something incredible. So, and I'd also like to mention that I never scored anywhere near the top when I came to Math Prize. I enjoyed the experience and I enjoyed the problems, but I was nowhere in the top level. And I had a similar feeling coming into my freshman year math course. I looked around and I said, all of these people are so good at math. There's no way I can ever be on their level. But I just realized okay, I like this course, and I stuck with it, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences for me. So just try not to rank, try to enjoy what you're doing is my advice.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, one more question. Do we have the microphone?
Thank you. I think all of you are so impressive, and congratulations. And I think, looking back, you're so outstanding, so you can go to any school that you want to go to. So what made you have the decision to attend the school that you're attending now? And looking back, do you think you made the right choice, and why?
So I sort of want to say first that I didn't get into every school that I applied to. But I had great choices, and I ended up going to Princeton for my undergrad, and it was a great choice for me. It was a smaller community, and especially the math community was really supportive, lots of wonderful faculty, lots of wonderful students. But anywhere I could have gone, I would have been fine, and I didn't need to have gone to Princeton, but it worked for me.
So I also didn't get in everywhere I applied, but I guess I can talk about undergrad and then medical school. Princeton, for me, my decision was I was really actually between here and Princeton when I was making my decision. And I think that the community, now that I'm in it here, is really great. But at the time that I was applying, I wasn't sure that I was ready for a big city I'm from a suburban neighborhood outside of Philadelphia, and to be honest, crossing the Charles at like 11 p.m. was really scary to me during the preview weekend. And I just didn't feel comfortable. And there's a lot of change that happens going from high school to college, because it could be your first time on your own if you haven't gone to away camp or something like that. And I really wanted to feel comfortable in my surroundings and in the community that I was entering. So I thought the people at Princeton were very, very welcoming and caring and supportive. And when you're going into a field that requires a lot of work, and there's discussions over majors that require more time outside of the classroom to get the work done versus others, I think it's really important to be in a supportive environment. And that sentiment was also very important to me, maybe even more important to me in choosing a medical school / place where I'm going to be for a long time, not 4 years, but probably 8 or 9 years. And so when I came to Harvard Medical School, I was blown away by just how supportive everyone was. People were very open about some of their challenges, and that's something that, especially during an interview weekend, people aren't always so open about. And I think there's this concept of effortless perfection, and that many of us here, go about our days and everything's perfect and it's wonderful all the time, which is completely not true, even though we can make it look that way. And I think the fact that people were willing to show that side of themselves here and to really be a stronger community because of it were very important in my decision. I also loved Boston. I thought 4 years later, I was ready for Boston in terms of moving up from kind of a suburban neighborhood to a city, and all of the opportunities that are here. I think, with the biotech companies and pharma and the universities broadly here, I think there's a lot of really exciting science and medicine going on. And so for me, it's really opportunities and community.
I also didn't get in every school I applied to. But I ended up choosing Yale for a few reasons, and one of them is that the math department and the math community there is rather small. So if I join, I can have a larger impact, and I can have a greater influence on the culture, which I thought that was very important to me. And another reason, and this is big, is I really liked Yale's residential housing system. So students are randomly sorted into one of 14 houses, and each house is a microcosm of the Yale community as a whole, so you get to meet a lot of people you wouldn't meet otherwise. So I'm friends with a lot of people who aren't math majors, and it's really great talking to people who are, different from me in some ways, and I really appreciate the diversity of perspectives I get there.
I chose MIT for a variety of reasons. One was that I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. I knew it was going to be something vaguely STEM related, but I wasn't sure what. So MIT is a pretty good, vaguely STEM related school if you're not sure what specific thing you want to study. The other reason, which might be the bigger one, was community, as has been brought up already. So for a variety of reasons, including various summer programs and high school programs and Math Prize, I knew people at MIT, and I knew just from having visited them that the people at MIT were people that I felt like I could get along with and I would be comfortable with and had a lot to learn from. So that's why I chose MIT.
I guess I chose Harvard because I felt like I fit in culture-wise there, and I really liked it so far.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of the comments so far on why you might pick a particular school. If you're looking at several options that have good departments in fields that your child might be interested in, they should really decide based on whether they think they'd like the experience there. So in terms that includes community, that includes what people do outside of class, maybe what kind of housing system you have. So so far, I also really enjoy Harvard because the departments that I'm involved in, the math and physics departments, are really great. And there's also a residential housing system, and I enjoy talking with all of my peers on what they're doing in diverse fields. So it's been a great experience so far.
Okay, great. So to summarize, it sounds like the most important things really have been knowing yourself, right? Feeling comfortable so that you can really thrive, being patient, allowing yourself to grow and figure out what it is that you want to do, and persevering. So, gosh, so much wisdom here. I'm just blown away. Thank you very much to everyone for coming, and especially for our panelists. If you can, I'll allow you to clap now for all of them. Thank you.